Good morning. I do apologize for being late. I was just reading, and when you're reading something that's fascinating as hell, sometimes you lose track of time. And I do apologize. That's rude and disrespectful. I am 5 minutes late, and I am so sorry for that. I am. I do want to start today's show with being very clear about something. I'm scared of heights. I don't do like tall anything. I don't ride roller coasters. I don't go by open windows in 8-story buildings, and I am happy. I am healthy. I am in good shape. My business is doing well. Keep that in mind going forward. Let's jump right into this. We've got something to talk about today as far as the Epstein files are concerned. And this is what I believe Trump is truly afraid of in the Epstein files. I always tell people, pay attention to what people do, not what they say. That will lead you to the truth more often than not. I saw somebody post something about the Zorro Ranch. No, that's not what we're talking about today. I'm going to tell you right now, Trump does not fear the little girls in the Epstein file. He doesn't. Politically, that is baked into the cake. We knew that before he became president the first time. We did. I mean, you can go back and you can watch, the Access Hollywood tapes on the bus. You can go back and watch, the fact that he owned the pageants was already known. The fact that all of that is baked into the cake and definitely not a deal breaker for his base. It just isn't. And you can see by their reaction, they're actually actively fighting now the release of the Epstein files. Daryl, good to see you. Glad to see you here. Thanks for supporting the show. I really appreciate it. Right out the gate. Thank you, Daryl. Before we get started, I'm going to paint some dots for you, and then I'm going to connect them all together. So just be patient with me as we do it. But before we get into it, there is a concept I want you to understand. About what's going on out there and what we need to be careful of. You've heard, I'm sure everybody has, it's all over social media. Pam bodies say if they prosecuted everybody in the Epstein files, that the system would collapse. And most people have responded to that with, well, let it collapse. Here's the problem with that. See, there's a thing. It's called the illusory truth effect. You've heard it before. If you repeat a lie enough times, it becomes the truth. The Russians, the KGB, really figured out how to weaponize the illusory truth effect. See, Pam Bondi never said this. Yeah. I mean, I don't mean to disappoint anyone or anything like that, but no, she never said this. There is no video evidence of anywhere of her ever saying these words. Pam Bondi says that if we prosecute everybody in the Epstein files, the whole system will collapse. That doesn't exist. It first came into existence as a meme. The internet is forever. I mean, we can track things down. The internet is forever. And Snopes and the fact checkers have been hot on this. And yeah, they've gone through and they've proven no, it is not true. She never said this. Well, why was it put out there in the first place? Pay attention. Pay attention. Jordan Miller, thank you. Follow the money. Exactly. Exactly where we're going today. The KGB figured out that they could use the illusory truth effect. Take something that's true, attribute that statement to somebody that never said it, or in some other way manipulate it so that that statement is not true. You know, the fact that if they prosecute everybody, if everything comes to light that the system may collapse, is a true statement. It is. What they're holding back in the Epstein files isn't just gross stuff about little kids. It is how deeply Russia has infiltrated our Broligarch class. So what they do is they put a meme out that says Pam Bondi said this, and it's not true. Well, you know what's going on social media right now in the right-wing circles? They're discrediting everything in the Epstein files. And one of the ways they're doing it is they're showing everybody on the right wing that Pam Bondi never said that this is just shit that you and I are making up. Yeah. And they've done it over and over again. There are other things that are being circulated right now about these files that are just obviously not true. But on the left, they're pushed as true. But if you go to Truth Social or you go over to X, they're discrediting these things. That's happening right now. So how do we avoid that trap? Well, just look at what people did. And that's what we're going to do. That's what we're going to do. So to understand, you've really got to go back to the beginning. You do. And I mean before this, before Epstein was hanging around with Trump, you've actually got to go back to the beginning. We're going to talk about where Epstein made his money. Stick with me. Some of this may be information you already know, but we're going to go back before this. We're going to go back to this. See, Epstein came from a relatively, I wouldn't say poor family, but he grew up in New York, Coney Island family. And he desperately wanted to be rich and powerful. And he had no problem whatsoever with lying to get it. In fact, he was really good at lying. In fact, anybody that knows anything about Epstein knows that that is his hallmark. Everybody that's ever talked about him has said two things. He was very charming and he just lied about everything. If it was raining, he would tell you it was sunny. If it was sunny, he would tell you it was raining. And he did it effortlessly. See, the reason I got this picture up, Jeffrey Epstein, math and science teacher, is it goes all the way back to the beginning. See, this picture was him when he was a teacher at the prestigious Dalton School. He didn't last a year really in that job. He didn't. He was hired as a math professor and a physics professor. The problem is he was an expert in neither. He has no degrees. He was not. You cannot fake being a physics professor. You can't wing that shit. But he told the Dalton School he was, and they hired him. And they figured out when he was teaching the classes that he didn't know, pardon the expression, what the fuck he was talking about. He didn't. And they had told Epstein, dude, this is it. We've got to be quiet about this because we didn't do a background check on you when we hired you. We should have caught this before we hired you. But you are not what you represented to us. We're going to run through the end of this year, which is almost over, and then you're not coming back. You need to go get another job. And that story plays out multiple times in Epstein's life. Proud Texas, Amy, good to see you. Amy Manuel. Back in January of 2017, I was told by someone in intelligence they had Trump on the financial crimes. Wait for it. It gets good. It really does. Jordan T, I appreciate you. Trump is using Epstein files redactions to continue to extort money and favors from influential rich people. That's Trump's MO. Trump is desperately trying to keep the connections to Russia from coming out. I will just say that right now. I will say that. Hollister, 8109, welcome to the membership. Whitey Bulger was very charming too. I met him at the Warren Tavern in Charlestown just before he went on the lam, circa 1996. I had no idea who he was. Most sociopath cons are charming. Excellent point, and that is a true fact. People in Southeast loved Whitey Bulger. All of the old people in the neighborhood loved Whitey Bulger. It is that class of people that are sociopaths. They can be incredibly charming. And that's what Jeffrey Epstein was. E.T., it shows how much that this cancer is spread into our body politic, and showing all of it shows how much work we all need to do to remove this cancer. Yes, absolutely. E.T., thank you. Omniscient Sphinx, thank you for always being here. Hey, Paul, I think the SAVE Act was meant to fail so they can throw red meat to their base and further the election with stolen BS. I think that yes and no. I think that was the backup plan. If they could get it through, great, but not going to pass the Senate. It's failed multiple times. Now, if it does pass, it'll just show you how defunct the Republicans have become. But yes, they are absolutely going to their base with the narrative that it failed because we Democrats want to cheat in the election. Again, accuse the other of that which you are guilty, because the Republicans are actively cheating in this election. So yes, ops are happening all the time. But how Jeffrey Epstein ended up being our problem was thanks to this guy. This is Ace Greenberg, Alan Greenberg. Ace Greenberg. He's the founder of an investment bank called Bear Stearns. Epstein charmed, notably and kind of worryingly, the girls at the Dalton school loved this guy. He charmed many of the parents at the Dalton school. And when it got out that he would be leaving, one of the parents at the Dalton school, who happened to also know Hank Greenberg, not Hank Greenberg, Alan Greenberg, Ace Greenberg, wanted to get Epstein a job, wanted to take care of him. So he invited Epstein to a museum function social thing that Ace Greenberg was at, and they were introduced. And the rest is history. Ace Greenberg ate it up, hired him at Bear Stearns, which, while at Bear Stearns, his rise could be called nothing but meteoric. I mean, he literally went from a trader to executive management overnight. But again, the lies catch up with you. They do. And this is Michael Tannenbaum. This is Ace Greenberg's right-hand man. Now, if you listen to Ace Greenberg talk about Epstein, or you listen to Tannenbaum here, Tannenbaum's still alive, talk about Greenberg is dead. But talk about Epstein, They sell this Pollyannish, they were the victims story. But there was a meeting. There was a meeting where Epstein was called in with Michael Tannenbaum because HR had called Tannenbaum and said, sit down, you're not going to believe this. But this guy Epstein that is really close to Ace, yeah, none of the shit on his resume checks out. He said he had 2 degrees from like UCLA, and none of that was true. And HR, after he was already in the company, after he was already trading, HR finally did some due diligence and a background check and found out that, well, like everything else in Epstein's life, he just lied about everything. So Michael Tannenbaum calls him into his office and he lays this out before Epstein. You're caught, man. You lied to us about everything. And you know what Epstein did? According to Tannenbaum, he said, yeah, I did. I absolutely did. You would have never given me a chance if I didn't. And look, Ace is super happy with what I'm doing here. But you'd have never given me a chance. See, Tannenbaum hadn't had the straightest career either. He had had some second chances handed to him. And being the sociopath that he is, Epstein had done some background checking on him. And he knew how to sell it. And he sold it as, yeah, no one would have given me a chance. And Tannenbaum says, that kind of struck a chord with me because, I had needed second chances in my life. So, according to Tannenbaum, which I don't buy this is like best case scenario shit that people sell when they don't want to be responsible for stuff, said that his reaction was to make Jeffrey Epstein his protege. He moved Epstein, basically promoted him to, well, he promoted him to a junior partner and made Epstein report directly to Tannenbaum. Now, Tannenbaum will tell you in hindsight, oh, I wish I'd have fired him then, looking at the monster he became and this, that. The monster he became, everyone else that has a relationship with Tannenbaum, the rumors are it involved he got him drugs and he got him girls. But you listen to Greenberg and Tannenbaum talk about it, and they're like, they were just good-hearted people looking for real scrappers. And yeah. But he completely lied. He lied his way into the Dalton School. He lied his way into Bear Stearns. But I really don't believe all of that. See, what's coming out, and there's some stories that are coming out. I want you to be careful. I want you to remember that trick, the illusory truth effect trick of taking the illusory truth effect, a lie that becomes true because it's repeated so many times, and then twisting it on its head to destroy credibility. I want you to keep that in mind as we talk about these things. But yeah, Bear Stearns was key. Y'all remember the we're going to go back to now we're going to move forward to the 2007, 2008 collapse. Bear Stearns was key in that collapse. Jeffrey Epstein, you remember derivatives? Jeffrey Epstein was key in Bear Stearns' push into mortgage-backed securities or derivatives. In fact, and this is why I don't believe this Pollyannish story about, oh, they don't know, and this, that, and the other, because Ace Greenberg was known. He didn't hire people with great resumes. That's not what he did. He hired what he said were smart people that were go-getters that wanted to be rich. He said that himself. He didn't hire the Harvard guys. He didn't hire the people with the outstanding resumes that are going to play ball the way they're supposed to. No, he wanted people that were going to push the edge. And that's what he had in Epstein. Native Fox, a woman would have never gotten away with that. I believe it. I believe it. Hollister 8109. That was back in Wolf of Wall Street days. That story sounds too fishy. Yeah. Wait for it. So Jeffrey Epstein opened up a shell company called Liquid Funding, based out of the Bahamas. And what Liquid Funding did was it took really shitty subprime mortgages that were a problem for Bear Stearns books. Because remember, these funds that they were setting up, these derivatives, were not monetized. They didn't have the money to back them up. This was during the liar loans days. And I want you to keep in mind, too, that when the collapse happens, they didn't tell the truth. They did the old KGB trick. Blame a black guy. You remember? They said that the collapse was banks were forced to give people loans, black people loans, that they didn't want to do, they weren't qualified for them, and that's what caused it. That's what caused it. You liberals on the left made us loan these people, and none of that was true. None of that was true. What was true was that banks totally obfuscated their responsibility, and they were giving anybody a loan. I remember famously, I love to tell this story. It was on the news about a mechanic that knew nothing about real estate, that all over the country had bought 12 houses sight unseen with liar's loans. And no, he wasn't black. He was a white guy. Had bought 12 houses sight unseen. And because he had made some money flipping houses. You would buy it, you just put it right back on the market, don't do anything to it. I'm not talking about the kind of flipping we know of today where they buy a distressed house and then they paint it and patch it in a few places, throw some landscaping on it, and then sell it for $100,000 more than they paid for it. No, I'm talking about back in this day, the real estate market was so insane. You would buy a house on Friday, and then on Monday you would relist the house for 25, 30%, 40%, 50% more, and some sucker would come buy it from you. People were flipping houses like crazy. People that had no idea what they were doing in the real estate market, and the banks completely obfuscated their responsibilities. And you had Epstein, fomenting this system of credit default swaps, basically creating an investment on gambling who was going to get caught with the bag. A game of hot potato with these mortgages. So Liquid Funding was created to repackage these mortgages in a way that they looked prettier than they were, and they would sell them to other people. Because remember, it started with Bear Stearns, but it didn't end with Bear Stearns. Randy Ryder, Trump was the trafficker. Wait for it. Chandra Patton, we have to keep bringing the truth. Yes, we do. 100%. 100%. But this whole Pollyannish story about, we didn't know, and Trump, Epstein became a monster. I don't believe any of that, because this is Michael Tannenbaum's business right now. This is his business right now. Caribbean Capital. Yeah. Contact us. Our office is in, 71 Woodlands, Singapore. In Singapore. Yeah. I don't think that it was Epstein that invented the idea of liquid funding. I really don't. Remember, he didn't know shit when he went to work for Bear Stearns. That's something that Ace Greenberg said, that he didn't know shit. He took him on as a protege and he taught them. But if you listen to Tannenbaum, you listen to Ace Greenberg talk about after everything went south, it was all Epstein and they just gave the guy a break, and same shit, different day. Nobody wants to claim responsibility. But there is again, I want the illusory truth effect. There is this thing going around on the internet right now that, as the Epstein files come out, all the different stories. Remember, the space is just getting blizzarded with Epstein's stories. And there's one going around that said Epstein triggered the collapse. That is not true. That is not true. There is video after video after video circulating on YouTube and everywhere else talking about liquid funding and how it triggered the collapse. It did not. It did not. It did not. What triggered the collapse was a company called Concord Management. Concord Management was invested in one of these funds, and they came to Bear Stearns and said, we want our money. Liquid funding did not do that. There is, again, stories going around that are becoming true to a lot of people because it's a lie that's getting repeated over and over and over again. And they're saying liquid funding went to Bear Stearns and demanded that some of their assets be, monetized out, that they be paid. And that triggered the collapse at Bear Stearns. That Jeffrey Epstein shivved, basically, guy by the name of Kane was running the company at this point. Ace Greenberg had retired. But that is not true. And I want to warn you, these stories are put out that are provably false. And this is the prevailing story. Epstein caused the 2007-2008 collapse. This is really being pushed. And I promise you, quite soon, all over X and all over Truth Social, they will disprove this because it's not true. The company that triggered the collapse at Bear Stearns was Concord Management. Now, why don't they want to tell you that? There's a reason. Oregon Wine Lady. Paul, I work for Pulte's escrow department, BITD. Folks who didn't have the money to support the loan countrywide were buying through Countrywide and Pulte. It was everywhere this was happening. Everywhere. It really was. Now, let's talk about Concord for a second. And why would they spread a falsehood that liquid funding did this when it was really Concord? They don't want you talking about Concord. They don't. And they want to destroy your credibility. Because if you turn around and you watch these videos that are all over they are really hot right now, all over social media, talking about Jeffrey Epstein caused the 2007-2008 collapse. You lose your credibility when they prove you wrong. When they say, Now, what does Concord Management mean to you? Nothing, right? You don't know shit about that. I mean, who the hell's Concord Management? It's just some company up in Tarrytown, New York. Pay attention. This is where it starts to get really ugly. Concord Management is a company set up here in the United States to allow Russian oligarchs to invest. Yeah. It's this guy. It's this guy. It's this guy. This is Roman Abramovich. This is Roman Abramovich, one of the richest, one of the wealthiest, most powerful men in the world. In fact, where he's from, he's about the tallest hog at the trough. The only person more powerful is Putin. Now, this is what I would need you to understand. Nobody was pulling out of derivatives when Concord did. Nobody. Remember, liquid funding was set up. Liquid funding was set up. Okay, Curses 007, thank you for being all roads lead to frickin' Russia. Wait for it. Liquid funding was set up to make sure nobody pulled out of derivatives. It's just the opposite of what the internet story is now, that it's what killed Bear Stearns. No, it's what allowed Bear Stearns to survive. Epstein was not trying to shiv Bear Stearns. It's where his money came from. So why did Concord want its money back? How did it know when nobody else did? How did it know that if it demanded its money, it would trigger that collapse? Who told them? Remember, no one was being told at the time. Remember how shocked you were? Remember how shocked everybody was? Oh my God, in 2 days, Bear Stearns collapsed. Oh my God, Merrill Lynch is collapsing. Oh my God, are we going to survive? Do you remember that? No one knew. No one was taking their money out of derivatives. But Concord did at exactly the worst possible time. And the Biden administration went after them. The Securities and Exchange Commission charged Concord, which managed billions of dollars for Roman Abramovich, with failing to register as an investment advisor. That's how we know about this. That's how we know that Roman Abramovich and the Russians were in control of Concord when Concord shivved Bear Stearns, because the Biden administration went after them. Now, put a pin in that. Put a pin in that. I want to talk about what happened between Trump and Epstein now. Put a pin in that. That's one of the dots. I want to talk about what happened with Trump and Epstein. Remember, they're bros, they're partying. But more importantly, I want to take you back in time to understand. One second. I need to pause for a second. To understand, Trump at the time was nobody. He was broke. He was fighting off bankruptcies. His casinos were collapsing. He was broke. He was nobody. He's just a guy that hung around with Epstein. That's it. He was nobody. Hollywood, with The Apprentice kind of, sold this bullshit that he was some master businessman. You're fired. Remember all that bullshit. That's where the dummies, the dumbest among us, that's where their beliefs about Donald Trump come in. But you have to remember, at this time, he couldn't get a loan. And Jeffrey Epstein knew this. Jeffrey Epstein was intimately aware of Donald Trump's finances. And in an interview with Michael Wolff, he explains what their fallout was all about. And it was about this. This is Maison de l'Amitié. Forgive our European audience. Forgive my miserable French accent. Maison de l'Amitié. We've talked about this before in a previous show. See, Epstein, who was very big into Palm Beach at the time, Trump not so much, flew his buddy Trump out to take a look at this property, specifically the pool and the pool house, because he was going to have to do some refurbishment. And Epstein had connections, and he knew at about $36 million, he had the winning bid for this property. It had gone in, the guy that owned it before had gone into bankruptcy. He knew due to insider information, this is part of what Epstein did, is he banked off of insider information. This is what he did. He knew he had the winning bid. So he brings Trump out to look at this property. And, he's like, I got this in a lock. Tell me what you think I had to do with this. Because again, Trump was nobody. Yes, rest in peace, Reverend Jesse Jackson. If you don't know, we lost Jesse Jackson yesterday. We lost Jesse Jackson yesterday. Civil rights icon. So when the bids get unsealed, and this is where Trump and Epstein went south. When the bids get unsealed, Trump has the winning bid at $41 million. He knew what Epstein was going to bid, and he outbid him. But Epstein told Wolff, so I knew he didn't have the money, and I know who loaned it to him. I know where he got the money. And 4 years later, the same person that it's speculated loaned him the money in the first place bought that house from Trump for more than twice what Trump paid for it. Now, remember, Trump is fighting off bankruptcies right now. He's broke. And he got a loan and then turned around and sells the property for more than twice what he paid for it to this guy. This is Dmitry Rybolovlev. Pardon me. I always have a hard time with his last name. I've talked about him forever, and I can never get his last name right. Rybolovlev. One more time. Rybolovlev. Dmitry's Rybolovlev is one of the original oligarchs, one of the original Russian oligarchs. This is who Epstein believed and told Michael Wolff loaned Trump the money to buy Maison de l'Amitié in the first place. Then turned around and also bought it for Trump for over twice what he paid for it. And then, okay, just to make sure chat is still working because it's not moving very fast for me. Do you know what Rybolovlev did with this beautiful Palm Beach home? I'll give you one hint. Nothing to begin with. He just let it sit and rot. But do you know what he did with it? Bingo! Manchita for the win. Manchita for the win. Yeah. After paying Trump 2.5 times the original purchase price of the house, he ripped it down. He just bulldozed it. Split up the lots and sold the lots. Yeah. 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 This kind of makes this make a lot more sense, right? Business Insiders talking about Trump Jr. talking about it doesn't matter because they were asking him about his dad's piss poor credit and how they were able to stay afloat. And he said, don't worry about it. He said, a lot of the family's assets come from Russia. We got our loans in Russia. You remember all that? You remember all that? Well, it's important that you remember Rybolovlev. And by the way, his money comes from, he's known as the fertilizer king. This is his company in Russia, was his company in Russia, Uralkali. This was his offices in Russia. They own mines, potash mines. After the collapse of the Soviet Union, he strong-armed his way in and took over Uralkali and then sold it for $6 billion, and he was off to the races. He was then a billionaire and has since been involved in several different things. He bought the Monaco Football Club. He bought Scorpius Island. He's into real estate is his thing. Now, I want you to keep in mind that nothing I tell you about Rybolovlev has anything to do with being a diplomat or working for the government. That's going to be important. He bought Scorpius Island. Y'all have heard of Aristotle Onassis? Y'all heard of Aristotle Onassis? That used to be Aristotle Onassis's private island. He bought that. He bought Scorpius Island and is converting it over to he actually has now converted it over to a luxury resort for the ultra rich. And he also owns a company called Amber Group. This is Amber Group. Amber Group is really big into crypto. And remember, it was Hollywood that made Donald Trump a thing again. You have to remember that. It was Hollywood that made Donald Trump a thing again. Russian billionaire Dmitry Rybolovlev's secret backing of some of Hollywood's biggest movies has been revealed in a high-stakes lawsuit. A firm Rybolovlev silently backed is behind blockbusters such as Top Gun Maverick and Mission Impossible 7. Yada, 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 yada. This is another dot I need you to put a pin in. We've talked about Jeffrey Epstein. We talked about Rybolovlev. We've talked about Jeffrey Epstein and how he got into Bear Stearns and how there's this bullshit about, circulating on the, on especially in right-wing media right now. Left-wing media right now, social media, they're talking about Epstein caused the 2007 collapse. Again, that is just like the Pam Bondi thing. It is a setup. Don't buy into it. It was Roman Abramovich's Concord that triggered that. And we have the question left, how did they know? How did they know? Then at the same time, you've got Dmitry Rybolovlev getting into Trump. Let's fast forward to today. We're going to jump around a little bit. Let's fast forward to today. Why is it so important? What put Trump and the Russians together in the first place? I mean, do you think they just one day said, hey, this Trump fucking loser, maybe we should just invest some money in him? No, that's not how that happened. The hen house. Will the turncoats like Bannon and Thiel, who seemingly worked alongside Epstein in Russia to destroy the U.S. democracy, ever be charged and convicted of treason and espionage? This is what they're afraid of coming out in the Epstein files. This little thing happened. And again, the media, Hollywood, nobody wants to touch this. Mr. Will, Paul, I remember at the end of the 80s, it was big news here in the New York, New Jersey area that Trump filed bankruptcy and had squandered his dad's money. That's when he couldn't get a loan for a Yugo. Yep. And then here came the Russians. But how did that happen? Well, again, they're terrified. I want you to imagine, they've told us what's going on. They've told us what's going on. That they want us to know. They're holding back 1 million or so documents that are horrific. They're not telling us things like this. This slipped out. To know who we're talking about, you're going to need to know who these people are. One second. And for our Norwegian audience, this is going to hit home a little bit. This is Torbjørn Jagland. Torbjørn Jagland. He's the former prime minister of Norway. He is an important person in the next part of this story. He has since he's been arrested, and they've started a corruption investigation in him, stemming from what's coming out in the Epstein files. I'm going to show you one little taste of it right here. This is Torbjørn Jagland. He is already under investigation in Norway. This is blowing up everywhere. This is Vitaly Churkin. This is Vitaly Churkin. He was the Russian ambassador to the United Nations. It's important to know who he is in this next dot that we're putting together. This is Vitaly Churkin. Now, a lot of people that are kind of ignorant will tell you that, Churkin was a spy. Churkin was not a spy. He was just the ambassador to Russia. It's just like our ambassador, ambassador to the UN from Russia. Just like our ambassador to the UN from Russia, if they heard something, they would pass it on. That's just what they do. That's what ambassadors do. That's what ambassadors do. They pass information on. And you have to forgive me. I'm having a hard time with YouTube right now. YouTube is having difficulty. I'm having a hard time seeing your chat. But as I catch up, I will get back to it. I'm having to back up with the chat and read it. YouTube is struggling right now. Russia. No, it is not a hoax. It is not a hoax. 1 second. Crypto equal monopoly money. Mary Mochrie. Yep. Marianne Giesler. Putin has orange by the blank. This is global money laundering cabal. Wait for it. All right. Caught up with the chat. Now, the reason Churkin is important is because this just leaked in the Epstein files. And this starts to tie it all together. And there's much more than just this, folks. But this is just easy, straight out there in your face. This is an email from Torbjorn Jacklin to Jeffrey Epstein, who were palling around together. Again, this is what Jeffrey Epstein did. He was a chronic liar. He was a sociopath, and he wanted to rub elbows with the most powerful people. And what did he do with that information? The girls were a tool to Epstein, a tool to do things like this, to put him in touch with people like this. So powerful people would put him in touch with people like this. This is an email from the goddamn Prime Minister of Norway to Jeffrey Epstein. It says, Churkin was great. He understood Trump after our conversations. It is not complex. He must be seen to get something. It's that simple. This is Jeffrey Epstein sitting talking to Torbjorn Jacklin, to which Jacklin replies, I'll meet Lavrov's assistant on Monday, and I will suggest, thank you for a lovely evening. I'll come to a high level. I'll come to UN high level week. He's talking about coming to New York to see this. That's when I'll see you again. To which Epstein replies, I think you might suggest to Putin that Lavrov can get insight on talking to me. Vitaly Churkin used to, but he died. And yes, Vitaly Churkin had died. He died in New York. He had if I remember correctly, he had a heart attack and he died. That is Epstein telling the Prime Minister of Norway that he had been feeding information to Russia via Vitaly Churkin. It's right there in black and white. Why that isn't the center of every fucking newscast all week, I don't know. Especially when you consider that Concord Management, when no one else was taking their money out of Bear Stearns, no one else, when everybody else was all in on derivatives, managed to demand their money at exactly the wrong time, triggering the collapse and run on Bear Stearns, which triggered the collapse of Merrill Lynch, which triggered the 2007, 2008 real estate debacle. The Russians fucking shivved us. And you're seeing right in front of you the insider at Bear Stearns telling the Prime Minister of Norway that he was the conduit of information for Russia. Which brings us back to Donald Trump and his now relationship with Russia. Why? Why would Dmitry Rybolovlev just give a shit enough to give Trump money to buy Maison de l'Amitié? Why? And then turn around and buy it for 2.5 times later. What he paid for it, and then do nothing with it and just bulldoze it, saving Donald Trump from bankruptcy. Why is he investing in Hollywood? Meanwhile, Russia is also all over our social media and elsewhere. And folks, I want to tell you, And I went, go back to the last show, the Russian spy that has just vanished, who was convicted last year. The Biden administration convicted the guy working for Russia, coming out attacking the Bidens, making up bullshit about the Bidens, and he just vanished. He just vanished. You've got the Biden administration going after Concord. And you've got the Republicans 100% on board with Russia. It was, it was the Republicans that were suborning this bullshit made up testimony from Smyrna, who has now gone in the wind. Nobody knows. Nobody's asking, why is he out of prison? Why is he gone? Nobody's even asking. Curse double seven. The Soviets didn't collapse. They just rebranded. Marianne Miller, thank you for supporting the show. I'm truly grateful. I cannot do it without you. I just can't. But folks, it's more than just Jeffrey Epstein was feeding information to the Russians. And then, Epstein, after he's burned and is in prison and is no use to them, you've got medical examiner saying, nah, he didn't hang himself. He was strangled to death in his cell. And then cameras, footage disappears, just that segment. And then, we catch somebody's left arm walking up the stairs, going to Epstein's cell. And, just shit keeps happening over and over and over and over again. That's just really weird. Fast forward to today. This just happened. This was just last year. Who is at the Saudi table at U.S.-Russia talks in Saudi Arabia? And the media says, okay, well, it's Witkoff. It's little Marco Rubio, Michael Waltz, before he was kicked out of the room forever for inviting a reporter to the Signal chat. Then you got Sergei Lavrov over here on the right and his deputy being hosted by the Saudis. Would you like to see another camera angle of this picture? Would you like to see another camera angle of this picture? Weird they decided not to go with this picture. Would anybody like to guess? Can you recognize the guy that the arrow is pointing at? That's Dmitry Rybolovlev, who is not, he does not work for the Russian government. He does not work for Sergei Lavrov. He is not part of their State Department. But he's in attendance. I wonder why. I wonder why Dmitry Rybolovlev is sitting in the meetings regarding Russian sanctions and the Ukraine peace deal. I just want to remind you folks that peace in Ukraine is not that hard. It really could be done fairly quickly. We could exert pressure on Russia that would absolutely crush them. We could. We could. But Trump can't. But Trump can't. And the reason he can't is because Rybolovlev is sitting in the room. And again, you have to forgive me. YouTube is having technical difficulties starting yesterday after, the whole Colbert fiasco. YouTube is having a hard time. So I'm having difficulty seeing your YouTube chat. But yeah. I need you to understand that. I need you to keep that in mind. We could give Ukraine the arms to absolutely end Russia. Russia hasn't made any significant gains in this war with their best efforts, with Iran helping them, with North Korea providing them with cannon fodder and shells. We could end this war quite quickly, but Trump can't. Trump can't. So yeah, you've got everybody that's distracted over here with Pam Bondi and I'm sure Trump's going to be destroyed when they find out about more little girls that he's diddling. No, that's baked into the cake. We've talked about that before. Everybody's like, I can't believe Trump survives this. It's baked into the cake. Everybody knows he's a pervert. Everybody knows about the Miss USA teen pageants. Everybody knows about the hookers. Everybody knows about No, Trump isn't worried about the little girls. Trump is worried about Russia. Because there is a lot more in those files about Russia, what Russia's been doing to infiltrate our broligarchs, the very same broligarchs that are influencing our elections right now. E.T., Paul, you and Matto need to get together and maybe do something every few weeks. You would be a great team. I appreciate you. I really do. I really do. But yeah, it really is. When you look at what happened, you look at Epstein, you look at what he was saying, you look at what happened with Bear Stearns, and you look at the collapse of 2007 and 2008, and you can see Russia fucked us. Russia attacked us. They did. They damn near destroyed us. If it hadn't been for President Obama, they would have. My God, imagine if Trump had been president in 2008. Not 2007. That was George W. Bush. But 2008. If Trump had been president then. Remember, the Republicans, they just kept saying, let it die. Capitalism, baby. Just let the big three die. You remember how hard they fought Obama? Trying to save our institutions, trying to save our industries. They literally walked to microphones and said, let it die. And everybody's shocked that the Republicans will do nothing with this open, blatant graft with Trump. They're not afraid of the little girls. They're not. They're afraid of everybody seeing exactly how far Russia's infiltrated the Republican Party and our broligarch class. Because I've asked you this question before. I will ask it again in this context. Why would Elon Musk, whose longest green, his biggest company is Tesla, it makes him the wealthiest man in the world, would he turn around, squat, and take a giant shit all over his customer base? Why would he do it? It makes no sense whatsoever. Unless you consider what's in the Epstein files. What is starting to come out in the Epstein files? Because just like Trump, Elon Musk hung around with Jeffrey Epstein and really liked Jeffrey Epstein. And if Jeffrey Epstein was telling Vitaly Churkin how to manipulate Trump, do you think maybe he was talking about anybody else? Of course he was. Of course he was. Which leads to the question, how did Jeffrey Epstein survive? Bear Stearns didn't. But Jeffrey Epstein walked out of that situation a wealthy man. Folks, he still owned, he still had an island. In case you ever wondered, this is Epstein Island. I want to give you an idea where it is. This is a map of the United States, Cuba, the Dominican Republic. This is the Virgin Islands. You see Puerto Rico here? This is the Virgin Islands. Everything to the left of this line is the U.S. Virgin Islands. Everything to the right is the British Virgin Islands. This is Little St. James, one of the U.S. Virgin Islands. This is Epstein Island. When you hear about Epstein Island, it's Little St. James. This is Epstein Island. He walked out of the collapse of Bear Stearns. He still had his fucking island. He was still hugely wealthy. How does that happen? How do you keep a resort when your employer is collapsing? That's another question that we've got hanging out there. Who was funding Epstein after all of this? Where was his money coming in from? I mean, you have to understand, at the time, Epstein was Bear Stearns. Not the best reputation to have, but yet money kept flowing in. Money kept flowing in. And you've got the email in Epstein's own words. I was talking to Vitaly Churkin about Trump and how to manipulate him. Do you think he was talking about maybe Elon Musk, who, is in the Epstein files? I'm going to show you one memo. This is actually several memos in this conversation. I have the conversation from The Guardian, from that article I just showed you from The Guardian. They've got all of it pieced together. I'm going to read it to you. But this is just to show you that, yes, these are actual memos from the Epstein files. You got Elon Musk here, redacted. Probably just Tallulah and me. What day and night will be the wildest party on our island? Jeffrey Epstein, replying to Jeffrey Epstein's question, how many people will you be for the helio to the island? How many seats do you need on the helicopter, man? And there have been other emails where you've seen just how hard up Elon Musk was to party with Jeffrey Epstein. But I've got that conversation in that memo rather than just show you piece by piece by piece by piece. the Guardian was good enough to put them all together. And you've got the whole conversation here. I'm going to read this to you. In November 2012, Epstein sent Musk an email asking, and by the way, 2012, you have to remember, Epstein had already skated. They'd already busted him for his trafficking, for his human trafficking. Pled it down to nothing but basically a solicitation charge. This had already all happened. This is over. That's long history. In November 2012, Epstein sent Musk an email asking, how many people will you need be for the Heli Island? To which Elon Musk responds, probably just Tallulah and me. Tallulah was his wife at the time. What night will be the wildest party on your island? Musk replied in an apparent reference to his former wife, Tallulah Riley. Musk followed up with an email on the 25th of December in response to another Epstein message that encouraged him to visit and offered to use of his helicopter. Do you want any parties planned? I've been working to the edge of sanity for this year, and so once my kids head home for Christmas, I really want to hit the party scene in St. Bart's or elsewhere and let loose. The invitation is much appreciated, but a peaceful island experience is the opposite of what I'm looking for, Musk wrote. Understood, Epstein replies. I will see you on St. Bart's. The ratio on my island might make Tallulah a little uncomfortable. To which Epstein replies, ratio is not a problem for Tallulah. That's what they're afraid of in the Epstein files. And yes, someone said, if we prosecute these people, the entire system's going to collapse. The entire system's going to collapse. There's a guy by the name Dan Pena who's been very loudly screaming at the top of his lungs. You may have seen one of his videos where he says, if you knew who was behind Bitcoin, if the world knew who was behind Bitcoin, it would go to zero overnight. Again, the same trap. The internet has been saying, oh, that was Epstein. Because Epstein did invest in Bitcoin. He did. He invested when the path for Bitcoin has not been a smooth uphill run. It has not been a smooth uphill run. It hasn't. It's had huge pitfalls. And when it was looking like it just might collapse, in comes Jeffrey Epstein. Coinbase was in trouble. Coinbase was in serious trouble. And here comes Jeffrey Epstein with some of that magic money that we don't know where the hell it came from. Why he still has it, why he still has an eye, we don't know. Everybody else lost their ass, but here's Epstein rolling. Still has an island, still flying around on a private jet. Now, the story they're pushing on social media, which is false, is that Jeffrey Epstein was behind Bitcoin. But that's not true. That's not true. He did invest in Coinbase. He did. You could arguably say that Jeffrey Epstein may have saved Bitcoin. But the guy that Dan Pena says is actually behind Bitcoin, is this fucking guy. And Dan Pena actually alleges that Bitcoin was a trap that they intend to crash, just like we saw in 2007 and 2008, where they damn near destroyed us, where Concord absolutely triggered the collapse of Bear Stearns. Dan Pena is alleging, and nobody's suing him for saying this, that it is 100% the Russians. And it's designed to absolutely cause another crash. This is what Bitcoin's doing right now. This is what's happened to Bitcoin over the last 6 months. It peaked out well over 120,000 on October 5th of 2025. And then the bottom fell out of it. I want to tell you a little bit of inside baseball about Bitcoin. Several major investors are holding large positions in Bitcoin. I'm talking the biggies. It has widely been circulated. See, these investment houses don't just let people willy-nilly do shit. They don't. You see that right now, as we speak, it's sitting at 67,000 from a high of 120. These investment houses have what are called risk managers. And it's written into, they don't just let some trader, some young guy, hey, I got an idea, let me throw some money at it. No, they have structures in place where if an investment fails at X point, the risk manager assumes control of that asset. It's when the parachute opens. They learned from Bear Stearns when Bear Stearns collapsed in 2 freaking days. They did. They learned. Every major, and I'm talking Goldman Sachs, I'm talking BlackRock, I'm talking everyone you've ever heard of has a guy that the traders are deathly afraid of ever. The traders and the analysts never, ever, ever, ever want to sit in the office of the risk manager. Because if that happens, they have just taken your portfolio away. And it has been widely publicized that the Bitcoin positions in most of these major trading companies, the bottom where the risk manager takes over is 60,000. If Bitcoin hits 60,000, you're going to see several major players overnight liquidate their positions in Bitcoin. And that will be the end of it. That will be the end of it. They're at 67,000 right now. So yeah. Are we going to have a show a year from now, 2 years from now, when I, the research finally comes out where I'm saying, oh, look, it was this Russian company that triggered the sell-off in Bitcoin? Are we going to have that show in a year or 2 years? Because we're watching it real time. Bitcoin has lost half its value. It's gone from 120 to 67,000. And if Bitcoin collapses, because 60 is the bottom, it goes into a death spiral at 60. This is what's being widely reported. The risk managers step in at 60. If that happens, what other dominoes fall? Dr. DAG7. This comes as no surprise. After all, Trump made this his new moneymaker. And like most things, Trump, failure is not far behind. Yeah, no shit, man. No shit. ET. And now they have the U.S. government in their pocket, and our job is to take it back. Get involved, do the work. We have years of hard work ahead. Amen, brother. Could not said it better, you two. Could not have said it better. Carl Rossi. China is smart to ban crypto. China's playing the long game in almost all of this. But no, they're not afraid. They're not afraid of the little girls. They aren't. This is their base. This is their base. I want to play you a video of a guy losing his shit on a plane. When you're arguing with a guy or some guy's insulting you on social media, when somebody's talking about that, like that to you, this is the fucker that's on the other end. These are the people that they're manipulating, that they're using social media to manipulate. And just like in the 2007, 2008 crash, now it's the illegal aliens, it's the immigrants. It's always bigotry, and this guy falls for it just immediately, because it's who he is. This is MAGA.
You get socked in the face.
Why? I'm American. You're the illegal. Yeah, you are. You're from Laredo. I know your grandparents.
I've been here my whole life.
No, you haven't.
Whatever.
You bought an illegal Social Security number.
You're racist.
I saw her and her uncles and aunts and all cousins swim the goddamn Rio Grande. Because I'm from Tucson and Fort Worth. And she comes from the damn Mexico. She can't say, well, open the door. Now I'm getting claustrophobic. This is going to be a problem if I don't get out of here. Okay, I need a doctor or CPR or 911. Okay, this is it. I've got to sit down. I am coming. No. Oh, God, my back. Jesus. I'm coming to you, Jesus. Jesus, mighty God, help me. Oh, Jesus Christ.
They really do.
Okay, that's only half the video. It just gets stupider from there. These are the people. They're eating the dogs. They're eating the cats. Yep. That's fucking Cletus right there. That's Cletus. Doesn't know this woman from Adam. She's just an airline employee. Won't snap to, does what he was. There's nothing more dangerous in this world than a white man that's not getting his way. I am telling you. You get some MAGA white guy and he's not getting what he wants, this is the kind of shit that you get. Skeet Sayre, thank you for always being here. I do appreciate you, brother. It's insane that U.S. created China's economy. Yeah, and China had a little something to do with that, man. They really did. They really did. China is playing the long game. But yeah, U.S. executives absolutely did have a hand in creating China's economy. Because they wanted Don Regan from the Reagan administration, Reagan's chief of staff, Don Regan, hated unions, thought it was communism, so it was better to ship jobs overseas than have unions still exist. Got to kill them unions, man. That's communism. Got to kill the commies. That's really was real. They thought better to ship the jobs to China than have an American with a union job. They really believe that shit, man. But look, I want to run through this one more time. You have Jeffrey Epstein coming out in the Epstein files, the Trump Epstein files, coming out talking about, yeah, I'm feeding information to Russia. I'm working with the Russians. His words, man. He's telling Torbjørn Jagland, the prime minister of frickin' Norway, yeah, I'm working with them Russians, man. Jagland's under investigation right now for corruption for working with the Russians. So you know Epstein's compromised, and the people around him are compromised. They're not afraid of the little girls coming out. We already know, man. We already know. What they're afraid of is us seeing in black and white Elon Musk. And who else? Tied to Jeffrey Epstein. And Epstein is feeding that information directly to Russia. And how does it absolutely 100% correspond? What did Jeffrey Epstein feed to Russia? Feed to Roman Abramovich and Concord, so that when nobody else was pulling their money out of derivatives, they suddenly show up at the perfect time to absolutely slice the Achilles heel of the American economy and send it into a death spiral. Who gave them that information when no one else had it? Everybody else was buy, buy, buy. Here come the Russians. Give me my money. Rich Lawton, thanks for connecting the dots. Now, you could sit here and you could say, oh, well, it was just coincidence. Just coincidence. Bullshit. It was just coincidence that Dmitry Rybolovlev, I will never get his name right, Rybolovlev, just shows up and loans Trump money, turns around and buys a house from Trump that he just loaned him the money to buy in the first place, according to Michael Wolff. You know, Epstein's telling Michael Wolff this shit. Michael Wolff says, yeah, Epstein just pulled out a stack of Polaroids. Remember Polaroids? Of pictures with Trump with little girls and laid them out on the table like a deck of cards. Look what I got. Do you think maybe the Russians saw that? That's what they're afraid of. That's what they're afraid of. This makes, anything, the Mueller Russia investigation look like child's play. It makes it look like frickin' child's play. The moment the United States news media starts to tell the country Epstein was a Russian asset, then everybody in these files start getting looked at. You know, you've got the PayPal South African mafia going all in on this government. And then it turns out, hey, there's that nexus. Maybe we should look at that. So yeah, when you hear if they prosecuted everybody in the Epstein files, or if you got to actually see the Epstein files, the system would collapse. Yeah. We'd be, there's going to be a thing called the Luigi effect. That's what they're afraid of. And they're distracting everybody with little girls. And I can't tell you how many people I see every day that think, man, if we just find out about the next little girl, Trump is done for. No, Cletus, that guy you just saw on the plane, he don't give a shit, man. They're actively arguing on social media right now. Why? It's all a hoax, man. They were on Fox News. Jesse Waters was on Fox News peddling it's just not that big a deal. That's really happening right now, folks. It's really happening. And I'm going to warn you one more time. The illusory truth effect is when a lie gets told over and over and over again that you believe it's true. They have weaponized that. They have weaponized that. If you hear something being said that's supposedly in the Epstein files, or somebody's a victim or something like that, and their story makes no fucking sense whatsoever, yeah, it's a trap. It's a trap. They did it. I showed you the Pam Bondi meme. Pam Bondi never said that. And right now, you can go to X, you can go to True Social, and you can look at the posts where they're discrediting the information in the Epstein files based on, oh, well, Pam Bondi never said that. They're just making shit up. No, pay attention to what people did. Jeffrey Epstein told you in his own email, he told Yaklin, I am feeding information to the Russians. I was feeding information to Churkin. Churkin died of a heart attack. I sure would like to continue feeding that information to Lavrov. Can you help me out with that? Yaklin's like, sure, man. I'm going to be meeting with his deputy. And then, you know what? That UN thing, I'll go there. That meeting at the UN, I'll make sure I'm there. Why? Do you need to see another line in that email that says specifically, hey, Jeffrey, I'm going to hook you up with Lavrov so you can continue to be a Russian asset? Since you already just confessed to me that you were a Russian asset that was feeding information to Vitaly Churkin? Do you need that line, or can you put those fucking dots together yourself? That's what they're afraid of. Because once you start pulling on that thread, you remember the Bank of Cyprus? You remember hearing about all that? The Bank of Cyprus? And that dust up not too long ago? Do you know who owned that bank? I'll give you a hint. It wasn't Cyprus. It was Dmitry Rybolovlev. It's one of the assets he bought after he sold Uralkali. Was the Bank of Cyprus. He's since sold it. Folks, I'm telling you, that's what they're afraid of. If you start pulling the threads on that sweater, it leaves them all naked. And yeah, the system will collapse. The system will collapse. Because what do you think happens when, I don't know, if people find out exactly how compromised, I don't know, just throw Elon Musk is. If Tesla collapses, if those dominoes that fucking size start falling, what do you think happens to Goldman Sachs maybe? Or BlackRock? Or these massive ass corporations that are ass deep in a corporate in Tesla stock that has no tie to reality in its valuation. None whatsoever. You couldn't sell enough Teslas to justify Tesla's valuation if it was the only fucking car company in the world. You just couldn't. So yeah, when one more time, don't listen to what they're saying. Pay attention to what people have done. ET, beware of the blue bots as well as the right leaning ones. Yes. Yes, I've warned you about them over and over and over again. You have people that do what I do that are more than happy to sit there and repeat the shit that the bots put out there just for clicks. Uncle Fatty, say it 3 times, they hear you. Say it 30 times, they believe it. Say it 300 times, they will fight for it. Say it 3,000, they will die for you. Stolen election, no conclusion, fake news, fact bet. Well said, Uncle Fatty. Well said. I want to thank all the new subscribers. There's so many of you out there. I'm telling you, that is the foundation for which we're going to keep growing. You subscribers are amazing. All the support is fantastic. All the support has been amazing. I just want to say thank you. I'm truly grateful. I want you to look at this. I want you to start digging at this. Stop. I'm not saying stop. That's the wrong thing to say. I'm not saying stop. Those that were victimized are important. They are. Yes, we need to get justice for them. But I also need you digging on the Russia connection to Epstein. It explains it all. It is that hidden piece of the puzzle that brings it all into focus and is what Trump is absolutely terrified of. Gail Brownell, John Thune, and several other Republicans went to Russia years ago over the 4th of July holiday. Still is hush hush. Yeah, absolutely they did. Absolutely they did. The NRA moved into Russia. There are no gun rights in Russia. They have some of the strictest gun laws in Europe. They do. You have to jump through hurdles and hoops and over walls and through valleys and swim rivers and everything just to get a hunting shotgun in Russia. But the NRA was there. How much money was being funneled from Russia into the NRA? These are the questions that they are desperately afraid you will start asking. Weird Idaho liberal. I think that AI is watching South Park is telling us to shove food up our butt. What? Red equals dumb. Oh my God. Oh, that just came out of left field. Jeff Schuler, Bitcoin would make the housing crash look like a bounce check. We don't have smart people in charge, which is terrifying. Yep. Jordan T, I liquidated my stocks into cash weeks before the 2008 crash. 2 weeks ago, I did the same again. A lot of smart people are doing that. I'm not your financial advisor. I'm not telling you what to do. I'm just telling you a lot of people are looking at this like it's been the crash is imminent. Skeet Sayre, Epstein is the fulcrum for all of this. That is the point I'm trying to make. If you will start pointing out that the center of this picture is Jeffrey Epstein, and you can see they move, they metastasize. They didn't put all their eggs just into Jeffrey Epstein. They didn't. There are more Jeffrey Epsteins out there, and they are terrified that you're going to start looking for them. Rena, it has never been just the little girls in the files. It's about the names in the files and what money deals were being made under the covers. Yep. The girls were a tool. That's the important part. The girls were a tool that these people used to manipulate depraved, sick old bastards. And in some case, sick young bastards. You know, a while back, we used to, you remember the Cold War and Russia versus, the KGB versus CIA, and we used to invest in what's called HUMINT, HUMINT, human intelligence. We did. Then we moved away from it and started investing primarily in SIGINT, signals intelligence. And yeah, in a lot of ways, it was a good investment because everything has to be transmitted digitally. In a lot of ways, it was a good investment. Technologically, we're light years ahead of Russia when it comes to SIGINT. But Russia is kicking our ass with human. The relationships they're building, they're gutting us. They took a look at the billionaire class and they said, you know, we dealt with oligarchs. We know how to do this. We know how to do this. And they went at them. And they used these relationships. And they did it brilliantly. It's just like I'm telling you with China. I'm going to wrap this up. I know I'm going long. It's just like I'm telling you with China. I just watched a YouTube guy, a pro-military YouTube guy, talk about, oh man, the Navy's got to invest in this and that and the other just because of China. China is not building a massive military. They've got a lot of people in the military. They may develop a neat fighter, but they're just like Russia. They don't build them. China is not investing its money in its military. It's not. China's longest green is going into soft diplomacy. Human intelligence. Everywhere we want to be, China is on the ground doing business. We just sent the military into Nigeria. China's been on the ground helping them deal with their desertification problem. The source of their conflict is desertification. We've talked about this in previous shows. We sent the military in to kill Nigerians and to kill ISIS and the Nigerians working with them. China went in and said, let me solve your problem that's causing you to fight in the first place. Instead of building this massive military, they're investing in those relationships. Russia's been doing a lot of the same thing in the most perverted, sick fashion. That's what these Epstein files are about, folks. That's what these Epstein files are about. It is the grossest soft diplomacy you've ever seen. Yep, right there. Killing US aid is another example. That is exactly what Putin wanted. That's exactly what Putin wanted because we used to make friends that way. When people, like in Sudan, when they were fighting because people were starving, we showed up with food. Now we don't do that anymore. And Putin couldn't be happier. Anyways, folks, that's what I've got for you today. I want to thank you for all the support. Thank you for being so patient. YouTube's having troubles. I cannot do it without you. You folks that support the show, you members, I am truly grateful. Y'all allow me to do this full time. I appreciate everybody. So many people have been buying mugs lately, pins lately. I am truly grateful. Again, there is no sugar daddy supporting me. You're it. You're the people that are keeping me going live. And I couldn't be more grateful. I hope you found this useful. I hope that we can do something with this. I hope that we can start pulling at that thread that is the Russia-Epstein connection, because that, again, is what Trump is terrified of us looking at. On that note, enjoy some Texas cities at night.